Commander is too complicated. Its rules carry unnecessary historic baggage, which makes for a worse experience at all levels of play, from beginner to veteran. Understanding this is important to understanding the design decisions that Wizards makes when handling the format. When you are designing a game, at some point you have to decide how complicated it's supposed to be. That decision is informed by genre, target audience, and intended experience. For some games, like competitive strategy games, it makes sense for them to be complicated so that there's lots of room for players to learn and experience their growth. In other cases, such as casual party games, complex rules don't enhance the experience, but rather diminish it, as mastery isn't the pursuit. Different games require different treatments. For every game, if you keep increasing its complexity, there'll eventually come a point where it's too much. This limit varies. For some games, it's very high. For others, it's low, but it always exists. Before we proceed, I need you to agree with this point. A game can be too complicated. If you don't believe that to be true, then there's no point in making any further arguments. So I'm going to assume that we all agree on this. A game can be too complicated. I like to call this limit the complexity budget. Designers need to work within the boundaries of the complexity budget, or they risk failing to create the desired experience for their target audience. Magic the Gathering, for example, is a fairly intense, rules-heavy game. It's complicated and its players enjoy that aspect. But even here, there's a balance to be struck. Cards like Urza's Saga are cool and skill testing, but if every single card was like it, then the game would become an incomprehensible mess. Simpler game pieces like Marauding Mako are important to give players a bit of room to breathe, to reduce the mental load so they can focus on the complex interactions they enjoy. For that same reason, it's also crucial that the game itself is as lean as possible. Excess core rule baggage consumes complexity that could otherwise be spent on card designs. Wizards frequently adjust the rules of Magic to keep them as simple as they reasonably can be, in both big and small ways. That's why Damage no longer uses the stack, and why we have recently seen so many new iterations of already existing mechanics. Saddle and Sneak are simpler redesigns of Crew and Ninjutsu. The lessened rules complexity then allows for cleaner and more interesting card designs. Calamity, Galloping Inferno, or Kitsune's technique couldn't have existed if bound by the old rules, or at the very least would have required significantly more card text to ensure that they are played as intended. It's worth noting here that complexity isn't necessarily just the length of the rules. Crew is at its core less text than Saddle, but Saddle is easier and cleaner with its timings. Allow me to reiterate my point because it's very important. Lesser rules complexity is valuable because it allows for higher card complexity, for more interesting and enjoyable cards. This then brings us to the conflict inherent to Commander's rules. As Wizards describes it, Commander is a casual multiplayer version of Magic, great to play with friends. Casual. That word carries some heavy implications. If Magic is normally competitive, a complex game intended for dedicated players looking for a challenge, then the casual version should be easier, more accessible, aimed at a different target audience. And on a social level, it is. Commander isn't usually competitive, which eases the stress of the environment. But on a rules level, Commander actually expands upon the base game rather than simplifying it. It has 4 different additional rules that are each quite complex. Just like writing a video like this is complex, so please give it a thumbs up and support me on Patreon. I'm about to tell you about real struggles that real players face constantly. I run the Commander FNM at my local game store, and I'm often the guy people come to when they have questions. While some of the questions and problems I'm going to bring up might seem obvious to you, I promise you they are not. I can say that with confidence because I observe players running into them all the time. First, we have the command zone and Commander. This one certainly seems straightforward, but raises questions when looked at in detail. Players are often unsure how additional costs or cost reductions factor into the Commander tax. They're also not clear on how commanders move through zones and if and when Commander tax applies. Like, if I've played my commander out of the command zone twice and then it's bounced to my hand, how much mana does it cost? Or if a commander phases out, can I put it back into the command zone? These are topics that aren't addressed on the official format page for Commander. The answers aren't obvious to a casual player. Second, commander damage. I have long expressed my distaste for commander damage's current implementation because it's unnecessarily complex, especially for something that hardly ever matters. I even made a video on this topic a long time ago that I fully stand by, so I won't rehash everything right now. The important thing for our discussion is that if played as designed, commander damage requires constant consideration. We're always tracking a set of additional numbers that are very unlikely to impact the course of the game. Imagine if playing Mario Party required you to write down every result after you rolled your dice. It wouldn't ruin the game, but it adds an unnecessary burden that will accumulate in the long run and consume complexity. In the livestream where Wizards first brought up the idea of changing how the hybrid rule works, they also very briefly touched on commander damage, which came to a surprise to a lot of the audience because many players view commander damage as just kind of fine the way it is. But this is why Wizards brought it up. They understand that it's too complicated for the value that it brings to the game. Third, color identity. Color identity has been the subject of much discussion lately, as Wizards proposed changing which decks hybrid cards are allowed to be played in. This is something I am staunchly opposed to, because it would make an already clumsy rule logically inconsistent. Color identity is one of the most confusing elements for new players, because frankly, it doesn't make a lot of sense that color identity and color aren't the same thing. It becomes even more complicated when considering reminder text color symbols like Extort or the firebending on a Zula Cunning Usurper. For a long time, color identity was just color, but also had the stipulation that the deck couldn't produce any mana outside of the commander's color. This made commanders like Bosch, Iron Golem, and Memnog kind of unplayable, and so the Commander Rules Committee came up with the color identity rule. I am convinced this was a mistake, a step too far. A better solution would have been to simply allow decks to produce mana outside of their commander's color. Commander decks should have remained limited entirely by the actual color of their cards, and since lands don't have a color, any deck should be allowed to run any land. This would have fixed all the existing issues while keeping the rules of Commander grounded within the existing rules of Magic. These rules would then also more easily adapt to including hybrid cards, as cards like Deathrite Shaman wouldn't require additional consideration. But today, color identity not only leads to confusion, but is also being used by Wizards for horribly sloppy card designs, like the new Ashling the Limitless. If you all want to make a 5-color commander, make it cost 5 colors of mana, or at least hybrid mana, like would be appropriate for the hybrid mana plane. I'm getting off track. The point is that color identity is not a clean rule, and that makes Commander complicated. Fourth, and finally, Commander is a multiplayer format. Managing 4 different board states and life totals, keeping track of resources and processing cards from Magic's 30-year history all is complicated, and for new players, often overwhelming. I frequently see arguments that new players shouldn't be playing Commander, that they should be starting out with 1 vs 1 formats. This makes some sense. 1 vs 1 formats, despite being more competitive, are, paradoxically, easier. Their rules are simpler and they are clearer in objectives and learning opportunities. For a player that's learning the basic rules of Magic, I agree that they should start in 1 vs 1. However, once past that point and actually playing, learning to play, not just learning the rules, I don't think this advice works. If I had followed this advice when I started Magic, I would have quit. The social aspect of Commander, the board game vibe, is a huge draw for me. Every time I've tried a 1 vs 1 format, and I've tried all of them, yes, that includes Standard, Modern, Legacy, Dandan, Draft, Cube, Powered Cube, Pauper, really anything you can think of, and I've always given it a fair shot with the full intent of enjoying it. But still, every time I tried, I found myself quickly bored of it. There's just nothing quite like sitting down with 3 good friends, showcasing the stupid shit we cooked up over the last week over a good round of Commander. I make videos talking about and deconstructing Commander because I love the game and its community, but spending so much time with it also makes me see its faults and the errors in how it's being handled. Why is there no multiplayer beginner product? You don't need to be playing Commander to play multiplayer Magic. And really, the main draw of Commander is that it's multiplayer Magic. As I just mentioned, Commander has a lot of problems that make it inaccessible to new players. Just last Friday, we had a group of 3 new players show up to our Friday night event at the game store. So I spent around 2 hours playing a very slow Commander game with them, absolutely loaded with questions and confusion. One of them was playing the Blight Precon from Lorwyn, which he managed to navigate fine from a rules perspective, but he never even got close to figuring out how to turn the interactions into something that progresses towards a victory. Precons these days are by no means beginner products, they are way too complex for that. Another had net decked a list made out of cards from the Assassin's Creed set because he likes Assassin's Creed. Each card was its own incomprehensible novel that he struggled to understand. The final player built his own deck, and it was about as effective as you would expect that to be. Admittedly, he was the only one that understood his own cards enough to actually make them function, so while he wasn't pushing for a win, at least he was playing. What these players really needed is a multiplayer beginner product. Think Jumpstart but for multiplayer, or a bundle of 4 simple precons tuned to play against each other. I actually built something like that myself, which I used to introduce players to Magic the Gathering. It's just a collection of 4 monocolor decks made up of simple cards that still work well in a multiplayer environment designed to be played against each other. 20 life points, no commanders, just simple Magic but in multiplayer. This way I get to introduce folks to the social Magic I enjoy so much while also keeping everything accessible and easy to understand. But outside of my home, this product doesn't exist, and in absence of that, new players that join because they find the social element of Commander appealing have no choice but to dive in headfirst into a format that is objectively more complicated than the competitive formats. None of this makes sense, and wizards are aware of that. Recently, Lutri got unbanned, but was given a new classification, banned as companion. This reignited a debate that comes around quite frequently. Banned as commander. Years ago, there were 2 ban lists, the regular ban list and the banned as commander list, which did exactly what it says. But the banned as commander list was abolished after years of there being at most 3 cards on there because it was useless. There just aren't enough cards to put on such a list, and then it just introduced a second list to keep track of. It consumed complexity while offering nothing in return. The banned as commander list should never come back, and I don't expect it ever will. That's not to say that I agree with Lutri being given the banned as companion classification. To play a companion, your deck needs a sideboard, but Commander doesn't have sideboards. Except for companions. A rule exception was carved out for a very small number of cards, which has then resulted in a second exception for an even smaller number of cards. This is nonsense. If Commander doesn't have a sideboard, then companions shouldn't be allowed, and then Lutri doesn't need to be banned at all. But the decision of allowing companions was made long ago. Reverting it now would cause uproar, so Wizards has to figure out how to deal with it. Given that, unbanning Lutri the way they did makes sense. Yeah, it's a new list, but it'll probably only ever have 1 card on it, so we can mostly ignore it. The complexity consumed is negative because the banned as companion list is mostly negligible, and reducing the number of banned cards frees up complexity. The Game Changer list functions similarly. While it itself consumes complexity, it frees up a larger amount by streamlining pre-game discussions. Still, players struggle a lot with knowing which cards are and aren't on the Game Changers list. Here's a little guessing game for you all. Gamble, Kinnan Bonder's Prodigy, and Mox Amber. Do you know which of these cards are Game Changers and which aren't? Knowing this is important. It dictates the cards you're allowed to play. In effect, Commander has 2 ban lists, and that's a problem. Wizards are clearly working to minimize both lists as much as possible, which is why Lutri was freed and why they're constantly bringing up new cards to also be unbanned. They're trying their hardest to spend less complexity on rules. It's Gamble, by the way, the only game changer from those 3, which is weird. I don't think Gamble should be a game changer when Entomb exists, but anyways. Magic is an incredibly well-built game with a carefully balanced complexity load. Commander took that and increased the complexity consumption by adding clumsily designed rules, while reducing the budget by changing the target audience. Commander is already way over its complexity budget. Common suggestions like a banned as Commander or additional requirements or lists for brackets can't happen because it would consume complexity budget that isn't available. I talked a lot about new players here, but even established players often struggle with all that Commander asks of them. A simplified Commander would be a better game. The simplification of general rules allows for a better understanding of specific rules. But Wizards find themselves at a dilemma, where they've been handed a game that functions despite its design, not because of it, mostly due to its legacy and timing, and navigating that is extremely difficult. Some stuff they get right, other things they fuck up. Now they have explicitly stated that they are taking a conservative approach, changing as little as possible, and this is why. They can't add anything, and subtraction is a difficult sell. Commander is just too complicated. This right here is my little box of easy-to-play Commander, well, not Commander, multiplayer Magic precons, right? I mean, Commander doesn't have to be the only way you play multiplayer. We did a draft, and I insisted that instead of playing boring 1v1 matches afterwards, we play multiplayer. And honestly, I thought that was way more fun. Anyways, this also doubles as my Ravnica Clue Edition box, which I think is a really fun alternative way of playing multiplayer Magic. But these decks are really simple. They're just, like a collection of 50 very basic cards and, some very straightforward concepts that you're used to from multiplayer Magic from Commander, right? And with cards that are kind of like designed, or decks that are designed to be played against each other. These have been really nice to just kind of like have around the house. I like them a lot. Anyways, I should also very briefly, and I kind of hate bringing this up, but I always feel like I ought to. There's gonna be some people that say, oh, no, what are you talking about? It's all so easy and obvious, and it is not complicated at all. And if you feel that way, then that's good for you, right? But I have a lot of experience with people on the ground, with people in the community. And I don't just mean with my close circle, but also with new people, with people moving in and out, right? I get in touch with people that, they play Commander once a month. And that is a very significant portion of the player base. I would say at our LGS, we have maybe 50% regulars and then 50% people that just circle in and out and they just play when they have time. And that second 50%, those are the people that struggle, right? And that's a significant number of people. That is a huge portion of the player base. So if you count yourself to the 50% that, are very capable of handling these things, then that's good for you. But I do think it's important to keep in mind that there is a very significant portion of the player base that isn't part of that. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and go check out my Patreon link down below. And I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.